Hello, my name is Houston, and this is Media Mood Board. This year, I wanted to do a better job of keeping up with indie comics, so I signed up for a mystery monthly mail subscription from a comic shop in nearby Brooklyn, and I'm going to be unboxing that for the first time here on the video. But first, my top 4 movies that I saw in January. That's right. My name's Houston, and this is Media Mood Board, a show about hyper-specific entertainment lists. Before we jump into this, just a little bit of housekeeping for 2024. I'm interested this year in trying out some more deep dive reviews on things. At the end of February, I'm going to be giving you my review of last year's Final Fantasy 16. I'm already in the research phase of this. I'm going to be comparing it to books and movies and potentially other games that I feel are trying to do the same thing and comparing them to how Final Fantasy 16 handled them. So that's kind of what to expect this month. So with that out of the way, let's get to the January top 4. Once again, this is not super in-depth. It's pretty casual. We're just going to go through them by release date, starting with the earliest. Europe 51 by Roberto Rossellini. A religious drama about a rich mother whose young son suddenly dies, and while trying to work through her grief, she discovers a calling to help out those less fortunate. So I really love this movie. It's probably going in like my top movies. So the director of this was part of a movement called the Neo-Realist movement that came right before New Wave did. It came right after World War II and was interested in examining how society and culture had changed since the war, both like economically and morally, and like kind of how do we move on from this. The star of this is Ingrid Bergman, who I think this may be the first thing I've seen of hers, but her and Rossellini had a relationship at the time, and they had the kind of this notoriously good run of movies together, Europe 51 included. And her performance is incredible. It's really engrossing. One of the interesting things about this is it's a melodrama, really, but because she plays it so grounded and everyone else around her plays it that way as well, it doesn't feel like crazy. Not that melodramas are bad. This is just different. There's mild spoilers, but within the first 15 minutes of the movie, the main character's son dies, which would be the climax of any other movie. But this starts her on her journey that we're trying to explore in this. And it's not black and white. You know, it's her trying to say, what do I do with my life? What was I doing? Was I not giving back enough? Trying to find purpose and helping other people, and the ups and downs of someone trying to do that. I saw some interviews with Rossellini where he was saying that he wanted to kind of tell a story to see what would happen if someone started becoming a saint, or like the birth of a saint, basically. How would they be treated in modern society? And Bergman played Joan of Arc on stage and won like a Tony for it. So she was a perfect match. She knew the tone like so well for this. If you like Joan of Arc stories, I think this is a really good movie for you, which I love Joan of Arc stories. Europe 51 is a pretty traditionally told story, but the next movie in my list here, we're jumping to 1966, and it is decidedly not traditional. Castro Street by Bruce Bailey. So Castro Street is a visual poem about an oil refinery. You'll immediately know based on the clip that I showed and that description if this is the type of thing that you'd be interested in. I want to become more articulate about experimental movie making. So this year I'm trying to start working my way through the Anthology Film Archive's essential movies list, and this is on it, along with a few of other of Bailey's works. This is like a 10-ish minute short film that makes like the experimental film comparison to poetry really like head-noddingly easy. You're like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. It's very visceral, it has great sound, and really establishes a great sense of place with abstracted sound and image. So basically the area that he's profiling, there is like an oil refinery on one side, there is like a railroad switch yard on the other side, and then it's surrounded by like fields. So he does these interesting things where you'll think you're looking at something organic, and then as the camera moves or distorts, you'll notice that, oh, this is part of the refinery, or oh, this was grass or a flower or whatever, which adds to that poetry level of it. You can kind of hear the lines in your head. He also did some interesting technique things where he would shoot in black and white as well as color, and then in the final he would layer those films on top of each other, so you get kind of this layering effect with different levels of light and texture going on. It's really fun world building stuff, and kind of talks about industry and things like that. And also I worked at an Amazon factory for a couple of months, and this is how it feels. We talked about Rossellini earlier, and this next movie comes from one of his champions.
Qu'est-ce que tu lis? Les femmes japonaises?
Ouais, j'en ai besoin pour mon travail.
Tu peux pas me prêter 3000 francs?
Ah si, bien sûr.
Je te les rendrai, je suis un peu serré.
Eh ben alors tu m'en passes encore 2000 et puis avec les autres 3000 ça fera 5000 et je te rendrai tout d'un coup.
Alphonse sera un grand écrivain. Tu sais ce que je ferai de lui plus tard, Alphonse?
Regarde, ton père va sûrement aller au water. Ils sont en train de s'équiper comme pour une expédition polémique, Victor.
Bed and Board, directed by Francois Truffaut. A slice-of-life rom-com about a young couple's relationship as they raise their first child. If you don't know Truffaut, you've probably heard of his movie The 400 Blows. That was basically his like slice-of-life story about being a kid. But something that's lesser known is that's the first movie in a series of movies which follows that kid from childhood through adulthood. And the movies get progressively more like rom-com-y, silly, sitcom-y as it goes on. This is super goofy, low-stakes stuff that's just really fun to watch. As an example of the sitcom-y vibes, the husband always has these weird odd jobs. So for instance, one of the few that he has in this is he pilots remote control miniature boats for a company. So that when prospective clients come by to buy boats, he can navigate them around a harbor so they can see how it looks. I saw this in the middle of the day on a print that was not pristine, which I think was really the perfect way to see it. The casualness of it, and it felt so not trying to be part of the canon, if that makes sense. Like, I think when you feel obligated to watch just the capital G great movies, you're going to miss out on so many stories and forms of expression. And this just felt so immediate. And so like Truffaut was like, this like, hey, I filmed something stupid. You want to come over to my house and watch it? That's how it felt to be in the audience watching that movie. Even though there's a lot of craft going on, that's how loose and fun it felt. It took the immediacy of the new wave aesthetic and utilized that to make it just feel real grounded and real and silly. And moving from the silly to the spooky. Terrorizers, directed by Edward Yang. a thriller about the paranoia of urban life seen through the connected lives of 3 groups of strangers. Last month, the Lincoln Center had a retrospective for Edward Yang, and I was able to catch 2. I saw Taipei Story and a Confucian Confusion. I thought Taipei Story was good, but I loved Confucian Confusion. So much so that later on, after I'd seen those 2, I was like, man, I want some more. So I ended up watching Terrorizers at home. Terrorizers has a reputation of being like extremely dense and very like postmodern. I agree that it's dense, but it's not boring. It's very like the pacing's great. It's got this like great tension and thrilleriness. It almost feels like a noir a little bit. The world is just so thick. Like you can really feel it as you're like going in there. It's like jumping in the water and your whole body goes in. If the plot sounded kind of vague, that's because the story is kind of vague. These characters feel very human and very real, but part of it is just how living in a community, feeling tied to other people who you may not necessarily know, and then these people start suspecting each other of affecting their lives negatively, and it kind of plays out. Is that true? Is that not true? Like, what's going on? Like with a lot of postmodern things, part of the mystery of it is like trying to figure out even what's going on. But I think that this has a real sense of genre in a way where you're not bored by that. It's definitely more than vibes here. There's a lot bubbling under the surface, so you can either sit back and enjoy it and just really enjoy being a part of this like really well realized world, or you can like examine its themes and its characters and what he's trying to say. It feels literary in a way that like after reading a good book, I'm like, man, I can't wait to read this again another time because I know there's so much here that I couldn't absorb on one read. And that's how I feel about Terrorizers. Okay, on to the mystery mail. This is from Desert Island Comics in Brooklyn. They have a really fun selection. Check them out. Buy something from them. The way their service works is it's just $40 worth of comics each month. This could be 1 book. It could be like 10. So I have not opened this. Let's see what's inside. Okay. Oh, there's tape on the side. Oops. Looks like we got a few here. Let's go through them real quick. So at the top, we have Excerpt. This is an excerpt from the book Kristof by Schubert, which will be released in 2025 through the anthology editions. Looks fun. I love the size. The colors are super fun. This is exactly the kind of stuff I wanted from this. Next up, we have Virus Tropical. Looks like a really fun, sketchy autobio comic. It says here, before she was born, the doctors said that they thought she might be a tropical virus in her mother instead of a child, and so it looks like it's about her life and growing up Catholic and things like that. 2 for 2. These are both incredible. Next up, we have a very indie comics title, The Necrophilic Landscape. This is by Morgan Vogel. It looks like this very expressionistic, kind of a surreal landscape here. Based on the back blurb, it looks like this is a world built around externalizing the fears that men have about women having bodily autonomy. Once again, I haven't read this, haven't heard of it. Super exciting. And then finally, the thickest one of the lot, 2001 by Blaise Larmee. Based on just a first look through, it does appear to be narrative, but it is an experimental comic that's a mixture of photo, collage, and traditional comicking. Doesn't really have too much of a blurb on either side. Yeah. Oh my God, I love this. All right. Well, that's the haul. Out of these, I am probably the most excited to read 2001. Was there anything that you saw or read in January that you really loved? Let me know in the comments. If you liked what you saw here, you can follow Media Mood Board on Letterboxd or Goodreads, or just here on YouTube. I'll be back at the end of the month for my Final Fantasy 16 deep dive. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Houston. This is Media Mood Board. Bye.